All right, welcome and salutations. Thank you for joining me today. And we're going to talk about something pretty interesting that's happened over the last, I was going to say 24 hours, but really, this dropped at about, I think, 9 a.m. today or something. The news came out. Basically, here in Australia, the major supermarkets, Coles, Woolworths, and after that, Aldi at some point, have actually announced plans to introduce vaccination mandates for their workforce. Now, this is for front-facing stores as well as their distribution centres and presumably all aspects of the business, and is a move that they have put in place that they say is for the workplace health and safety of their staff. Now, this has predictably entered into the discourse in such a fantastic way. I love it. I love it. And we're going to look at some of the earliest reporting that came out on this particular subject. And we're going to be looking at Rebel News. Oh, we love it. We fucking love it. Rebel News, the news network that is fighting against censorship to make sure you get the news that matters. I don't know if that's their tagline. It's something like that. I know when you go to their website, it just goes, fight against censorship. So you kind of know what you're getting there. Essentially, Rebel News is a conservative leaning. I don't know if leaning is the right word, mostly because I don't know if it's strong enough in terms of describing how far right they are. But they are, the typical free speech, conservative, drum beating sort of bullshit that you'd expect from anyone that's trying to emulate the right-wing news in America and import it to fucking Australia. Fantastic. Let's go. So, here we have their first hot take on the subject. So, 1:15. I mean, it's a retweet of something that was already on the official. We're on Avi Yemeni, Osrali Avi, his Twitter. He is a gold resource when it comes to conservative bullshit, but hey, that's all right. We're going to look at their news reporting, we're going to look at the coverage, and look at how they're framing the situation, and we're going to talk a little bit about whether or not mandates for a pandemic are reasonable or whether they are something else. And we're going to start by looking at whether they're something else, because obviously Rebel News is going to have a very specific idea of what they think it is. Maybe we should just adjust this a little bit. That's better. All right, so over 250,000 workers across Australia's major supermarket chains, including Coles and Woolworths, have been told that they must be fully vaccinated or they will lose their jobs. Aldi is set to follow. Of course, the audience that one such as Avi Yemeni cultivates is very interesting. This is so wrong. My advice is this: if you don't have any debt, quit, upskill, take this opportunity to learn new skills, new jobs that won't require you to take a jab where you have no guarantee of long-term life-threatening risks with zero compensation. 9 News told us 8 deaths, try 456. Now that's a weird. Are they trying to? Maybe they're at the character level. So what is this? Their TGA database of adverse event notifications. The footage shows that the narrator is searching for all adverse events reported for people who received Comirnaty, Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, or Janssen vaccines from the start of 2021 to August 12th. Search results show 48,001 adverse events reported during that period and 456 deaths reported following vaccinations. Interesting video. I'd like to see that video because off the top of my head, a death rate of 456 out of 48,000 is probably just how many people died after the vaccine, and maybe no link. But anyway, we don't have the actual fucking source, do we? No. What's the quote tweet on this one? Winky dink. Jesus. Vaccine pox got pox and what? Fucking weird. Followed by Optus. Oh, they probably had an issue with Optus. I think they follow you so that you can DM. Anyway, stay tuned for you won't be allowed to enter the supermarket if you aren't vaccinated. We'll cover that later. Bizarre, hey? It's almost as if vaccination is key to stopping a global pandemic. Oh, look. Doctor, you're a veterinarian. Followed by K. Rudd. Okay, that's trust points right there. All right, cool. Anyway, let's get to the story. Let's get to the actual story at the Rebel News website. Let's make this blind friendly. All right, Woolworths and Coles announced mandatory vaccination for staff. Supermarket chains will sack employees who fail to comply with mandatory COVID vaccination orders. Unrelated video. Great, fantastic. I may be looking for an Elgato mic stand. Thank you, contextual advertisers. Over 250,000 workers across Australia's major supermarket chains have been told that they must be fully vaccinated or they will lose their jobs. Coles and Woolworths, considered essential services by the government during the pandemic, have announced mandatory vaccination for all workers. Aldi plans to follow suit in the next few weeks. Now, let's remember, we are doing it. Let's put on the journalism hat here. Let's put our media hat on. What we have is the inverted pyramid in terms of what is the key information. So you go from the headline, which should be the most important piece of information. Then you have the heading. Basically, it's like a mini headline. It's kind of like the subtext, which is the second most important information. And then as you go down this, basically you have the key points and it goes down to the less and less relevant things. So clearly the focus here is that people are going to lose their jobs if they don't get a jab. That is what is considered the most important part of this story. That is the loss of jobs for people that don't comply with vaccine a vaccine mandate by their employer. Coles and Woolworths, no, we've already done that. Woolworths unveiled their nationwide mandatory vaccination schedule a short time ago with CEO Brad Banducci. I'm sorry for, I think, Italians. I apologize for what I just did to that name. Explaining that the decision was made after his team reviewed the best medical advice. Quote marks there are interesting. Now, you might say, well, they're quoting his exact words, but I mean, they're quoting him here as well. So I feel like that's intentional to sort of cast aspersions over the advice that they're using. All right, we have 170,000 team members across our stores, distribution centers, and support offices, and more than 1,200 retail stores. With each store welcoming, on average, 200,000 customers a week, a single team member can come into contact with quite literally thousands of people in the course of a normal working week, says. As we enter the next phase of the pandemic and learn to live with COVID-19, we need to strengthen our workplace safety settings, and vaccinations are clearly a key part of this. What are these linking to? Linking to The Age, linking to Channel 9. Interesting choices, Rebel News. Interesting choices. Customers do not need to be vaccinated. Staff have until March 31st, 2022 as the latest to comply. We'll get into that. Now, again, generally you'll find news. So let's go to Channel 9, for example. I hate how they've got unrelated shit at the top. Like, this is a different story to what this is about. Anyway, these articles from more legitimate places. A underexposed horrible photo of Coles. What the fuck? Have they fired photographers from the media? Underexposed, not correctly white balanced photo of Woolworths. Holy shit, that's horrible. Overexposed outdoor photo of Aldi. Jesus. So, but my point is, those photos are relevant to the story. The Age. That photo's a bit better. I mean, yeah, I get the exposure's tough because the light on the outside is a lot brighter than the light on the inside. Notice how they've gone to the dim interiors to make it a lot more relaxing instead of that bright fluorescent light that used to be all the rage. Again, supermarket picture. So these other sites have actual fucking pictures. Rebel News, no. No shitty photography, no underexposed, overexposed, incorrectly balanced photos. No. They have a tweet. Reignite Democracy Australia. Coles and Woolworths mandate vaccines Australia-wide. Get RDA's legal advice and hold the line resources. Australian-wide mandate. Coles and Woolworths. Blah, 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 blah.
Staff of these companies use our Hold the Line page, employer legal letter, join your industry group. Okay, maybe we'll have a look at that. Oh my gosh. Despite Prime Minister Scott Morrison's promising that COVID vaccination will remain voluntary for Australians unless they're in a particularly vulnerable industry like aged care, he has done nothing to stop state premiers and businesses from discriminating against unvaccinated staff. The famous conservative push for governments to have more power over businesses. Isn't that amazing? I thought the whole point of being conservative was to reduce the restriction of business and of the market to do what the market does best, and that is to self-regulate. I thought that was the whole fucking problem. I thought that's why we couldn't look into things like managing emissions and putting in targets for companies to go carbon neutral, to stimulate things like, renewable energies. I thought that we didn't want government to be doing that. That government shouldn't be in the business of that. But no. Now that there's a business that is deciding that for the safety of their staff and their customers, they are going to have mandated vaccinations against a current pandemic that has ravaged the world over the last 2 years, that's too far. We can't let businesses make that decision. We can't make businesses decide that they want to make their spaces as safe as possible for their staff and customers. We need Prime Minister Scott Morrison to come and step in and put a stop to that. Journalism, that right there. See, look, reporting the facts already. That inverted pyramid. Let's go back and let's just go across this. So we have 1, 2, 3, 5 sentences in basically, and it's a call to Prime Minister Scott Morrison to step in and stop this ridiculous mandate for safety. Coles made a similar statement and will sack those staff members who do not comply, regardless of how long they have worked there. Don't know what that's got to do with anything, as if there's a mandate for something that is required to do your job safely. That shouldn't matter if you've been there for 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. We have encouraged and supported our team members to access vaccination as soon as they become eligible to reduce the risk of infection for themselves, their colleagues, and their families, said Coles Group CEO Stephen Kane. Northern Territory, Western Australia and Victoria have released strict health orders that mandate vaccination for most workers, including those at supermarket chains, in contradiction to the Prime Minister's public comments. See, this is the thing about the Prime Minister's public comments is I don't give a fucking shit. When it comes to this pandemic, Scott Morrison has done fuck all. He has insisted that at every step, any active policy that is needed to help control the spread of the virus, it is the Premier's decisions in the states. He has neglected his national border in terms of getting Australians home. He has fomented fights between the states over whose responsibility is what, because there's this whole bullshit about New South Wales bearing the brunt of the financial cost of bringing Australians home. Well, maybe that should have been a fucking federal thing, and maybe that should never have been a burden on the states themselves to get Australians back into Australia. It didn't get the vaccines in time, neglected to actually make that a fucking priority in his government, and basically all the heavy lifting has been done by the premiers. So what he says, his public comments, that's about all he's done in this entire fucking pandemic. And to then go calling back to Daddy ScoMo to protect you from a business making a decision for the safety of their employees and their staff and their customers, it blows my mind. And I know people read this and go, yeah, that's a good point. If Scott Morrison said that, why aren't people doing it? Well, because we're a fucking democracy. We're not a fucking monarchy or a dictatorship. Whether or not he is the current Prime Minister, turns out what he says is not law. It still needs to be acted into legislation before it actually becomes law. And so he can say all the shit he wants unless he gets that fucking stuff passed. Well, we'll take it on notice, but we'll still do what we think is right. Carry on. Source, trust me, bro. A friend who works for Woolworths in Queensland has said that employees were told they have to be vaccinated by March 31st or they will lose their jobs. Glad that I've stopped supporting Woolworths. These companies need to take the hit where it hurts. Are they cancelling Woolworths? We're cancelling Woolies. Woolies is being cancelled over vaccination mandates. Cancel culture is just going too far these days. My stars. My fucking stars. In addition, Coles has implemented that employees in New South Wales and the Australian Capital Territory must also be fully vaccinated by December 17th. Even though Premier Dominic Perrott, I still don't know how to say his name properly. I took the effort to fucking learn how to say Gladys Berejiklian. Now I've got to learn how to say Dominic Perrott, which it sounds like Italian for clown. Perrott, or whatever it is. Which I don't even know how to say that in Italian because it's a word I learned watching fucking Japanese anime. Has said restrictions on the unvaccinated will end starting December 1st. Employees in Queensland, South Australia, and Tasmania remain except for the moment. Oh, that rush to get out there and strike while the iron is hot and put an article out, 4.5 hours after the news hit? Couldn't take that time to do the fucking proofread, eh? Anyway. So here's the thing. There's a conflation here. What the Premier has said is that this state will not place restrictions upon the unvaccinated. That is not the same as saying that there will not be rules in place for people to interact with businesses that people will have to comply with still. So, for example, I can be refused entry into Woolworths or Coles or whatever if I go and say, look, I've got this massive bag with lots of pockets, but I don't want you checking it when I go out. Do they do that anymore? I know JB Hi-Fi. Anyway, a lot of businesses would be like, one of the conditions of entry is that, we may check your bag when you leave. That's my privacy. That's my private personal property. They don't have the right to do it. Well, it turns out that there are actually several things that if you're interacting with a business, they have the right to ask you to agree to as part of the terms of service. Now, I know a lot of us think terms of service, we think like that huge page of things that we don't read when we install software, but it's still something that, technically it happens in stores and stuff. It's just something that we don't actually think about because we've never had it become such a massive fucking issue, despite the fact that, if I'm not wearing a fucking shirt, I'm not going to be allowed into the fucking Breakfast Creek Hotel to get a pint of beer and a steak. Like, it's just not going to happen. It's part of the terms of service of entry is that I need to be properly dressed to a reasonable standard that's expected of the venue. If I'm going to work in a business, I need to comply with their minimum expectations for what they think is going to create a safe and a healthy environment. This is where things get a little bit insidious in that it's being conflated with... We're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's keep reading. Tom Dawn, Aldi's chief executive, said that every Australian should be getting vaccinated with very few exceptions. Our employees deserve to come to work every day with the comfort and confidence that they are in the safest possible environment. Giving our people the safest work environment is simply the right thing to do, said Daunt. Other large Australian corporations have also brought in mandatory vaccination policies, with companies inside the Wesfarmers Group, such as Bunnings and Officeworks, planning to make proof of vaccination a requirement for future employees. This marks the establishment of a permanent state of discrimination against unvaccinated Australians who are increasingly facing unemployment unless they comply. So here's the thing, right? Discrimination here, particularly, is being used incorrectly. The presumption here is that discrimination in workplaces is immoral, unethical, and 100% agree. Shouldn't discriminate in the workplace. The problem is that that is not being balanced against anything else. And what I mean by that is that there are freedoms that are free, and there are freedoms that cost other people freedom. And a good example of that is vaccination status. So if I was to go to my workplace, so I work in a place where there are hundreds of people in the building that I work in. And if there was no vaccination, if there was a vaccination mandate there, I could go to work feeling safe. I could go to work feeling that I'm protected, that my workplace is doing all that they can to ensure that the environment is as robust in its defense against COVID. And I would feel that that is a responsible and a reasonable thing to do. Now, if they were to say, well, vaccinations aren't being mandated because it would be discriminatory against the, let's face it, the small percentage of people that wouldn't get it. I think there are places in Australia where the vaccination rate's above 90%.
which suggests to me that in a broad population, the vast majority of people are supportive of vaccinations. Like, that's just a fact. That's just the society we live in has clearly adopted the position that vaccinations are a good thing, are ethical, and are safe. Now, the problem is that the small minority, so even once you take out 90%, say we get to 90% vaccination, there's a percentage of those people that aren't vaccinated for good reasons, for responsible reasons, for real medical necessity. Immunocompromised people who can't get the vaccine and whatever. So it's not like we're here expecting 100%. We're expecting those that can should. Interestingly, that's not really what you get from the article. What you get from the article here is explicitly that if you don't get the jab, you're fired. Not sure that's responsible reporting, because I'm not sure that that's entirely accurate. But hey, we'll see. We'll do some research. We'll do our own research. But it's just part of this broad fear-mongering about fucking, like, just doing your bit in society, just fucking being a person and thinking, you know what? We are all safer together if we get vaccinated. We're all safer together if we wear seatbelts. We're all safer together if we follow the speed limit. We're all safer together if we follow any number of laws that are designed to protect us. But no, Rebel News is all worried about discrimination. Now, let's remember that legal discrimination is against a protected status, and vaccination status is not protected. Your protected things are like disability. Vaccination status is not a disability. Disability, age, ethnicity, race, sexual orientation, gender expression, those things are protected attributes. And the idea that conservatives are trying to use that language to co-opt and to try and convince people that are actually progressive on issues and actually care about people, and try to use that to prove that, hey, well, my personal choice to take or not take a vaccine based on completely arbitrary bullshit is just as valid as your desire to be treated humanely and not have disadvantages because of your race. No, not gonna fucking fly. Not gonna fucking fly. Oh man. So just out of curiosity, what is their another career in jeopardy? Oh my god, a nursing student. Don't get censored. Wait, didn't they link to the age? Maybe they did, I don't know. Pastor Arthur's lawsuit? What the hell? I don't even know what that is. Rebel Daily. Maybe we'll look at some of these videos later. Alright, so Woolworths Group. Here we go. Share price, $39.64. Fantastic. High of $39.98. Going great guns. Whatever. Let's have a look. This is actually their FAQ. So here's a little hack, right? If you're ever curious about news, particularly if it's news about a big business or a company, often you can go to their website. And if you look on their website, you'll actually find a link to media. And if you go to media and click latest news tab or press releases, you'll often find the primary source for some of the biggest news stories that you might see. So when we have Rebel News over here, and that's why I was clicking the links, because I was curious, right? They have linked to, it was up here, wasn't it? They have linked to other news sources. So 9 and The Age, even though they've got another article on their website calling out The Age's editor or whatever. That appears to be their only source. Now, I don't doubt that they have read the actual press release. 3 comments, what have we got? A certain employer went on an employment drive, obviously making the contract include vaccinations. Why should all Australians take a needle that will make them sick or dead in time? Why don't the Gov and their families be told to have same needles? We all need to stand up for ourselves, Australia. I don't know what that means.
Translate. Think it over, guys. Good advice. Good advice. The fuck is this? Brisbane stand against... That's got to be old. Anyway, we're getting distracted. So if we actually go back to our the actual press release, so we can actually see where some of the stuff's been quoted from the test. Jesus Christ. From the text. So I believe that was a direct quote. Actually, most of that was a direct quote, so fine. Where's my cursor gone? There it is. So here we go. They talk about the mandate. They talk about the context of it, but they also announce that Woolworths Group will engage with its team and others who regularly visit its workplaces to understand any practical and individual issues in meeting the requirement. This will include allowing for legitimate medical and religious exemptions. Woolworths Group expects to make a final decision and release its policy in November 2021. So bear in mind that this is an announcement of the intent. The actual policy isn't in place yet, and they're quite clearly signaling that there is going to be grounds for medical and religious exemptions to this particular work mandate. So I think that's a fair amount of latitude, particularly obviously the medical exemptions. I firmly believe that there's no reasonable, ethical, or moral policy for vaccine mandates that can't actually have a stipulation that medical needs must be considered as legitimate grounds for not meeting that particular mandate and still being eligible to work. Religious ones, not that I don't think religious exemptions aren't reasonable. My biggest concern there is specifically that there are going to be religious people who co-opted their religion to post hoc justify resisting the vaccine mandate because they're equivocating the vaccines with like the mark of the beast and shit like that. That is going to be a hellscape for HR and IR teams to manage when it comes to people coming up and saying, oh yeah, I'll go to the first annual Baptist church revival tent and we don't believe in vaccines anymore. I don't know how you manage that. But, hands down, yes, religious concerns. Again, we go back to what an actual protected attribute is, and religion is one of them. So they would need to be protected from, having to comply with things that may put, their spiritual perceived well-being at risk. But we keep going down to what is behind it. There's a clear and compelling case for a vaccination requirement to provide the safest possible work environment for all our team members. This is particularly important as restrictions ease and we see higher rates of transmission. Very true. Around a third of the Woolworths Group Australian workforce is already subject to state-issued health orders, which require either full or part vaccination in order to work. Given the important role in providing food and everyday needs to the community, Woolworths Group will not require its customers to be vaccinated to access food and other essentials in stores. And so this would have been a media release that would have been sent pretty much as is to most major newspapers. I doubt it would have been sent to Rebel News, if I'm perfectly honest. Generally, the sort of thing that just gets sent to real news networks, not to fucking rags like Rebel News. And essentially, we've gone over the Woolworths one. I'm not going to go over Coles and Aldi as well. It's going to be the same, right? I can almost guarantee that there's been consultation in the industry amongst each other, and they haven't done this independently. They almost certainly have discussed the shared issues that they face. So, I imagine it's going to be pretty similar. And frankly, like Woolworths and Coles, even if they didn't collaborate on their response here, they're going to be very responsive to each other in terms of decisions either one makes. So effectively, it'll still be the same sort of thing. So what did we learn? What did we learn? We learned that any news is an opportunity for some right-wing, horrible news outlets to actually come in and fearmonger. Unironically, they're the ones that are fearmongering as much as they try to claim that it is people that are spreading fear of this virus that's got a 99.98% survival rate, which isn't true. And they are instead spreading fear about Australia has fallen and dictatorships, and you might as well be living in Mao's China and all sorts of garbage. So get vaccinated, and if you can't get vaccinated, understand exactly what your what your situation is with your doctor, so you know what steps you can take to keep yourself safe, and don't be Rebel News.